Also from my side, my name is Mark van der Hagen, and I work in the Innovation and Networks Executive Agency. As Christian already said, this morning we received a lot of questions already, more than 350, and we thought it was a good idea to maybe recap the ones that come back most frequently, so that you have a good idea of, I would say, the most important issues that you are looking at when you are preparing your applications. Maybe to start with just a short reference again to the funding and tenders portal. In order to have information on the support activities that we can give to you, then again, go to the portal. You don't forget to select the Innovation Fund, and then you can click on the support tab, which you see in yellow on the screen. And in the support tab, you can read a lot of information on the guidance that we can provide to you, and already gives you some general information. From the support tab, you can also find your access to the frequently asked questions. And if all this information does not give you the answers to the question that you have, then of course you can also ask your additional questions that you have. If these questions are relating to the substance, to the rules, to the call text that where you want to have more information, then please click the Innovation Fund tab. However, if your questions are more related to IT or technical aspects, such as I don't have access to this, or I can't find a template, or I have problems with uploading my documents, then you can also ask your questions to the IT help desk, which is available on business days from 8 to 8 in the evening, and so you will receive your answers from there. Now let me move then to the recapitulation on the questions. Maybe first starting with quite some questions that we receive in relation to the general geographical scope of the actions. So please be reminded that your projects must be implemented on the territory or of either the European Union, Norway or Iceland. But also we had some specific questions on the territories which are in EU member states, but which are not part of the European Union, like overseas countries and territories. Now, projects in these on these territories are not eligible, so that's important to know. And we had in particular questions from the Nordic states in relation to that. But I would say, on the other hand, it's also important to be reminded that both EU and third countries applicants are eligible under the same conditions. So the important element is the location of the implementation of the project. That has to be on the European Union territory, but third countries applicants are treated in exactly the same way as EU applicants in the evaluations of the project proposals. Then a second category of questions are linked to the budget and to the durations of the project. Now, the minimum size of the projects is 7.5 million euros, and this is 7.5 million of total capital expenditure of the project. So there is no minimum size, however, for the relevant costs of the project. Also on then looking at the duration aspect, please keep in mind that by default there's 10 years of monitoring. Once the project has entered into operation, it can be shorter if you have a good justification for that, but it can never be less than 3 years of monitoring. And then an important milestone also to keep in mind is that up to 4 years after the grant agreement, the financial close must be reached, and this is a hard deadline. In terms of grant, then you know that up to 60% of the relevant costs of the project can be supported. This is 60% of the relevant cost for the whole project, and also keep in mind that there is no, like we have for Horizon 2020, there is no increased funding rates for certain types of beneficiaries like research institutes. These 60% relate to all relevant costs of all the beneficiaries, meaning also that then 40%, the remaining 40% must be funded, of the project must be funded from other sources, 40% of the relevant costs. And then also note that the grant to the project is through lump sums. So we have no concept of funding on the basis of as a rate, as a percentage of the eligible costs. The relevant or eligible costs are used to calculate the lump sum, but the payout is linked not to the costs, but to the reaching of milestones in the project. Then, in terms of grant disbursement, up to 40% of the grant can be disbursed before the financial close, and such disbursement is linked to project milestones. So financial close is a project milestone, but you can have additional milestones before the financial close that can trigger disbursement of part of this budget of up to 40%, and then a minimum of 60% of the grant will be disbursed after the financial close, and that will then be linked to the achievement of the greenhouse gas emissions avoidance. Now, also note that if you don't achieve these greenhouse gas emissions avoidance, then it is possible to reduce, to face a reduction of your grants, or even a recovery of grants that has been disbursed. And in order to receive the full grant, you need to achieve a minimum of 75%, of the greenhouse gas emissions that were planned in the framework of your project. Then we received a lot of questions in relations to partnerships. So, do you need partners? Can you submit the project as a sole applicant and then become a sole beneficiary? That's certainly possible. But if you consider that you want to team up with other partners, then be aware that a consortium is need to be created, and the consortium will need to have a coordinator. The responsibilities of the coordinators are set out in Article 7 of the model grant agreement, which you can also find on the funding and tenders portal. And also note that the responsibilities of the coordinator cannot be subcontracted. Then there's also, when you have a consortium, then you also need to establish a consortium agreement. A consortium agreement is setting out the internal arrangements and also designates the project coordinator, and this needs to be signed before the grant agreement is signed. Also note that it is always the coordinator who receives the EU funds for the entire consortium, and then he has the obligation to distribute the payments he receives from the granting authority to the other beneficiaries without delay, of course. And then maybe also a few words about who are the beneficiaries. We also got a lot of questions on that. In fact, an applicant becomes a beneficiary, and a beneficiary has then direct responsibilities for the implementation of the project. And maybe we can also look then at the various actors. We have beneficiaries, affiliated entities, subcontractors, associated partners. And we had a lot of questions on what are the rights and obligations of each of them. And this table gives you a nice summary overview. So beneficiaries, they are the ones, and the only ones in fact, who sign the grant agreement. So they are direct parties to the grant agreement, and this also means that they are fully responsible towards the granting authority for the implementation of the project and for complying with all the obligations that are in the grant agreement. They can charge lump sums contributions, and if they rely on affiliated entities or other participants, it means still that they retain the sole responsibilities for the implementation also of by the other actors. Now, in the affiliated entities, they have similar rights and obligations as the beneficiaries, but the difference is that they don't sign the grant agreement, so they are not a party to the grant agreement. And because of that, if the granting authority will make claims, they will go to the beneficiaries for these claims to whom the affiliated entities are associated. So that's, I would say, the main difference between affiliated entities and beneficiaries. Subcontractors, they cannot charge, of course they do not sign the grant agreement, they cannot charge lump sum contribution to the actions, and the responsibility for, I would say, the implementation of parts of the project by the subcontractor lies with the beneficiaries, and the actions are in fact included in the annex of the grant agreement, but it is the beneficiaries that charge the lump sum that correspond to the actions of the subcontractors. And then lastly, we have the associated partners. They participate in the action but may not charge contributions. and also the costs of their tasks are not eligible and also therefore do not appear in the grant agreement. So this gives you a good overview of the various types of partners in the project. And then we had also the question whether it is possible to change partners. First question in relation to whether it is possible to changes between the first and the second stage of the application, and then also during the project implementation. Now the answer to that is that change is indeed possible, but only under certain conditions. So a change of the partner should not imply a change in the substance of the project. For instance, if a partner came with a certain technological solution and you change the partner who comes with a completely different solution, then that would not be possible. Also, we have to make sure that such a change are not as drastic that it would really question the outcome of the evaluation of the first stage. So that's an important criterion that we will look at. And also note that, of course, the more changes that you introduce between the first and the second stage of your applications, the more the evaluators will also question whether your project is really mature during the evaluation of the second stage proposal. And then we will also ensure equality of treatment of all applications when considering decisions on possible changes. Now, also note that when there is a change during project implementation, that this will lead to an amendment of the grant agreement that needs to be approved by INEA. Then also a word on the eligibility of costs. Now, under the Innovation Fund, we state that eligible costs is the same as relevant costs. Now, on the way to calculate the relevant cost, you will have a whole annex with a detailed explanation on the methodology to do so. We have also more information on that in the frequently asked questions. And also note that the relevant costs are in fact calculated in order to determine the lump sum. So this is a different notion as eligible costs in other programs, where eligible costs have to be submitted, and you get a percentage of and the grant is a percentage of the eligible cost. So not here. Eligible costs or relevant costs only used to calculate the lump sums, and the lump sum payment is based on the milestone, so no need also to declare these eligible costs in order to get the funding. However, please note that there is a requirement of a statement by an independent auditor that confirming the correctness of the relevant cost application, and that is in particular also important when you prepare your second stage application. And this statement is required at the entry into operation, and this can also lead to a revision of the amount of the grant. So my last intervention is in relation to how to report on the eligible costs for grant disbursement. As I indicated, it's fully relying on the lump sum contribution, and the grant disbursement is so really linked to the proper implementation of the action, the completion of the work packages, and then also overall linked to the achievement of the results in terms of greenhouse gas emission avoidance, which need to be 70% of the initially planned performance in order to be to get the full reimbursement. So, Christian, that is a quick overview of the most frequently asked questions that the most frequently asked questions that we have received.
Mark, thank you so much. Thank you so much to all the other presenters as well. Melina, we still have more questions, I guess.
Yes, we do. Thank you, Christian. So we'll try to cover some more general questions which are relevant for the highest number of applicants possible, a bit leftovers on greenhouse gas emissions, but not only. So first, on sector classification again, what would happen with your proposal if you select the incorrect sector? For example, in the presented variation 2, one selects hydrogen instead of refineries, fuel. The calculated avoided emissions would stay the same, but would it be rejected just because of this incorrect selection?
Well, the selection will be corrected. The project will not be rejected, of course. So don't be worried too much. Yeah.
I'm sure this answer sparks joy in some hearts. I cannot not ask the most voted question. It's quite an interesting one. Section 8.2 of the call for proposals states that in the second stage, the applicant will have to submit third-party verification of the greenhouse gas emission calculation. Does this third party have to be an accredited EU ETS verifier? If so, which activity codes should be covered in the accreditation?
Well, there is no requirement that this third party should be an EU ETS verifier. Of course, EU ETS verifiers may have the knowledge to check the calculation, so they are more than welcome to do that.
Thank you. Another question, between stage 1 expression of interest and stage 2, is there a percentage change limit with regards to greenhouse gas emission avoidance as there is for costs, 50%?
No, there is no such change limit. This limit is specifically for the cost because there is no requirement for detailed calculation for the relevant cost. So there will be, of course, small changes in the greenhouse gas emission avoidance calculation because we have some simplifications for first stage. This will result, no doubt, in changes in second stage. Any other change has to be explained by the applicant why this is occurring.
Thank you. We still got a few questions on consortia. Can the consortium be made up of SMEs, research centers, industrials, etc., or is it strictly a consortium of industrial players due to the pre-commercial scale asked?
I would say that indeed the consortium can be made up of SMEs, research centers, and industrial, as long as indeed the project is not a research project, but really a deployment project.
Thank you. One more on the same topic. In consortia, can one member beneficiary only claim a right to charge the costs under the grant without providing financial contribution through co-financing? In other words, are all beneficiaries in consortia obliged to bring finance to the project under the remaining up to 40%, or only a lead one?
So it is indeed not a requirement that only one beneficiary brings finance to the project. It's all the project partners that contribute to the project with their activities, with their costs, and these can then also make claims to the lump sum.
Thank you. And probably one last. Can a joint venture in the form of a corporation made up of partners who jointly construct the project in relation to the technical expertise be considered a beneficiary and apply for funding?
The short answer is yes.
Thank you. So let's move to some more general questions, but still better to reiterate. Is there a maximum grant support per project?
%60 of the additional costs.
Thank you. A question which is recurring, will a list be published with high-level information of the selected project so we can have an idea which industries apply for the fund?
Yes, we will come back with information about the applications on the first stage. As I said in the beginning of my intervention, so this should happen in November.
Another question, what is the maximum PDA support, project development assistance support for a single project?
There's no such thing as a maximum support. This will be discussed and negotiated with European Investment Bank case by case.
Thank you. I think we are getting through a lot of questions. Let me see if there is anything else which is important to address it at this stage. Yes. Are there any templates of the feasibility, business and implementation plan? For example, the additional documents we need to submit with our application?
No, there are no templates. We leave this we give some flexibility to the applicants to write them as they see fit, but there are questions in the application form which needs to be followed.
Thank you. Another linked one. Can we use previous versions of the feasibility study which describe well the technology, but maybe the project size differs, or it has to be project specific under DISCO? If we had a feasibility study for a 30 megawatt wind farm, but now we want to develop a demo unit of 10 megawatt, can we still use that feasibility study?
I would say you can build on that feasibility study, but we would strongly recommend the feasibility study to be relevant for the project that you apply with.
Thank you. And maybe to close, can we recall how one can apply as an evaluator?
Yes, I think it's a very good question. We like this question because indeed we want still to have as much as possible applications for evaluators, and it is in the same tool that it is through the funding and tenders portal that you will find all the information that is necessary to apply as an evaluator. So it's the answer is go to the funding and tenders portal, and there you will find the procedure on how to do so.
Thank you. One more interesting question. Will the project applicants selected at first stage be disclosed publicly?
No, not at the first stage.
Thanks. And maybe one last question, which I think relates to the beginning of the session. Small-scale projects, is everything below 7.5 million capex? Will it also be limited with regards to topics at the large-scale call?
Yes, this we will discuss at the expert group meeting on 21st of October, I think what we are going to propose is that the small-scale call will have the same scope as the large-scale call. So the same projects that are eligible now should also be eligible for the small-scale call, but just in smaller size.
Thanks. One more question, which maybe we have covered, but good to reiterate for clarity. Are research and development stage projects eligible for funding?
I think it very much depends on the business viability of the project. If research and development project still has its market and it can demonstrate that it will have sales and will be able to cover its costs once it's operational, obviously the project is eligible.
Thank you. And one more question, which we have also discussed previously, but still good as a refresher. Can the 40% costs, I imagine, other resources include mainstream EU funds? So basically, what can be included in the 40%?
Yes, it can include the mainstream EU funds. It can include own funds and the member states' funds. So any other funding sources that the beneficiary has at its disposal.
Thank you. I think with this we have more or less answered all questions which could be useful, and I would pass the floor to Christian.
Yes, thanks. Thanks very much. Thanks for all your questions. I hope we could deliver the answers that you expected. Yeah, I think there's not much left for me to say. Then again, a big thanks to all our colleagues at the JRC, at ICF, at INEA, here at DG Klima. And I'm looking forward to welcoming you again next week for our Clean Finance Conference, 25th of September. You will find all the information on our website, on Twitter, on other social media. And yeah, I wish you very nice sunny day, at least sunny here in Brussels and very hot. And hope to meet you soon again. Bye and big thanks.